Hi, welcome back to the Lizzie Life YouTube channel. It's great to see you again. I am Elizabeth Thompson, mom to 4 crazy kids, wife to 1 patient man, and we are in the middle of a parenting series talking about the foundational things we need to teach our children in their early years. And make sure you go back and watch the video called First Comes Love. The things we're discussing are love, obedience, respect, honesty, and responsibility. And in that video on love, I talk about the absolute importance of laying a foundation of just a foundation and an atmosphere of incredible expressiveness and affection in our families so that our children absolutely know that we adore them no matter what. When you've got that in place, it gives you the confidence that you need to do the kind of firm, strong, no-nonsense parenting that I'm going to talk about today. Today we're discussing obedience, and oh my goodness, that's like such a hard thing to teach to children. When my daughter Cassidy became a toddler, we quickly realized that, oh, she's really stubborn and she has her own idea about how her day should go, what her rules for her life should be, what her clothing should be. I mean, she had an opinion about everything. And we quickly realized that teaching her to obey the way God calls parents to teach their children to obey was going to be no easy task. And I remember one day Kevin's my husband, took Cassidy to TJ Maxx. And they're walking through the store and he says, "Okay, Cassidy, it's time to go home." She kind of looks at him with this coy, teasing expression on her face and starts sprinting away through TJ Maxx. And he's sort of, ha ha ha, okay, come back. This is not really funny. We really need to go now. And she keeps giggling and running through the store. And it quickly became this like battle of wills and this scene in the store. He's chasing her through TJ Maxx, trying to not draw attention to himself, and yet he's getting completely ignored and made a fool of by a 2-year-old. And that was kind of the day when Kevin came home and we were like, okay, we got to stop caretaking and start seriously parenting this child. She absolutely does not obey us. And that's when we got really serious. We were a little late to the game with her. But teaching obedience starts very young, and it's something that God calls us and commissions us as parents to do. Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 1, it says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you, and that you may enjoy long life on the earth." It goes on and it says, "Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord." And this is our responsibility from God, to teach our children to obey. Why? So they can have a happy life. Kids who don't learn to obey and to submit to authority humbly have a really tough life. They don't get along well with teachers. They don't get along well with coaches. They buck the government. I mean, every authority figure in their life becomes a problem for them. We have got to do them the favor of teaching them how to obey and respect. And I remember my mom, when I was little, she would always say to me, "You have got to learn to obey mommy now so that when you're a grown-up, you can learn to obey God." And that stuck with me. I tell it to my kids now. Hey, learn to obey me now, because you're going to have to obey God one day when you become a Christian. That's what we're laying as a foundation in our children's hearts. What can and should we expect when it comes to obedience? I think this is something that we struggle with. We don't know what it looks like. And so I want to explain what obedience doesn't look like. It doesn't look like a temper tantrum. I think that one's pretty obvious. It doesn't look like, "Oh, Mom, you're so mean to me. Oh." If that's the attitude they have while they're doing it, that's not obedience, and it's certainly not respect. It shouldn't be, "Fine, I'll do it." It shouldn't be moaning, whining, complaining, Okay, those things are not obedience. Um, there shouldn't be stamping of feet. Um, Basically, it shouldn't be a battle every time. If you find yourself, and I have definitely been here with my kids at different points, if you find yourself feeling like every little thing I ask this kid to do is a battle of wills, then they haven't gotten obedience yet. What can and should we expect when it comes to obedience with our kids? We should expect that when we tell our kids to do something, they respond fairly quickly. We should also expect that they respond with a reasonably good attitude most of the time. You know, they're not going to be perfectly all smiles every time you tell them to clean up their toys, but they should do it with a good attitude. If they're stomping their feet, whining, complaining, rolling their eyes, that's not obedience, that's not a good heart. So how do we get there with our kids? How do we get them to a place where they're obeying with a reasonably good attitude most of the time? I think it comes down to three things. It comes down to confidence, it comes down to consistency, and it comes down to creativity. When I say confidence, that's inside of you. It's the knowledge that God has given me this role. He has given me the right and the responsibility to establish rules and boundaries for my child's life. God has called me to teach them humility and respect and obedience. And you own that and you don't back down from that. That's the confidence we're talking about. When I say consistency, this is absolutely crucial in teaching kids to obey. It means that when you say something, you mean it. It means that you have a consistent standard you call your kids to. That, let's say your 3-year-old likes to throw fits when it's time to leave the playground. And one day you're real strong and real firm and you discipline them and you say, you absolutely cannot behave that way. And you give some kind of consequence and you deal with them. But then the next day, maybe you're tired or you're embarrassed because there are a lot of people watching, which my kids love to throw temper tantrums with a crowd. That's just, you know, it's so fun to throw a temper tantrum and humiliate my mom with a lot of people around. But maybe you're tired, maybe there's a crowd, and so you back down and you don't really deal with them. So the next time you go to the park, they're like, you know, last time I got away with it. I'm going to try again, because you've confused them. We've got to be consistent. And then the other thing we've got to do is we've got to be creative. You know, we can't just have one way that we try to teach our kids. You know, if you always hit the same note, you're not going to really be able to get through to them. You've got to have a lot of things in your arsenal, and some of those things will be punishments and consequences that hurt. Some of those things will be rewards that get them excited about being better and doing the right thing. Some of those things will be just kind words, words of affirmation that make them feel good about themselves when they do the right things. You're going to have to study your kids and figure out different creative ways that motivate each of your children. And I'm sorry to say that it may be different for each kid. I feel like by the time my kids are out of the house, I'm going to have like a PhD in Cassidy, Blake, Avery, and Sawyer. I'm going to know them so well, what motivates them, what gets them excited about doing the right thing and being the best that they can be. I want to encourage you to stick with this, to choose your battles wisely. With young kids, you got to pick one or two things to focus on at a time. Maybe it's leaving fun places with a good attitude. That's a big one. Maybe it's not ignoring mommy when I tell you to come here. And those are the two things that you're focusing on right now, and you hit them over and over and over again. And I guarantee you that if you focus on those one or two things consistently, then in a week or two, you'll see a significant change. What if you're hearing all this and you've got a 5 or 6-year-old and they're still doing a lot of the things that I've mentioned today, the eye rolling, the bad attitudes, the talking back, the whining, the moaning, and you feel like, wow, they're not an obedient child yet. That's okay. Don't panic. What I would do is this. I would sit down with that child. I would do some soul searching on yourself and kind of think through, okay, how can I become more confident? What's my strategy going to be? But then I would encourage you to sit down with that child or children, read them Ephesians 6, talk about, hey, look, God calls you to obey me. God calls you to learn to be respectful and obedient and cooperative with mom and dad now so that you can obey him later. And there's going to be some changes in this family. I'm going to have some new expectations for you. And here's what that's going to be. And you talk about, I expect this. I expect you not to roll your eyes anymore. I expect you to stop whining. And you explain that to them. Then you can really move forward and you'll start to see change really quickly. I hope this gives you some great starting points and just ideas for where to go from here with teaching obedience to your kids. Next up, we're going to be talking about respect. If you subscribe to the Lizzie Life channel, you'll get those updates as I post them, or you can also visit me on my blog, LizzieLife.com, where I write a lot about this kind of thing. Thanks for being with me today. See you next time. Gives you some great starting points for teaching obedience. I feel like they're not robots. They're not army. They're not members of the army. Hello, butterfly. All right, I lost my train of thought. Is this making sense what I'm saying? Okay. Thanks. Or if they don't immediately have a good attitude, I'm being attacked. They should get a good attitude pretty quickly.